Hey guys, so in this video I'll be talking about the main causes for hypochondria, also known as health anxiety. So if you are someone who is currently experiencing health anxiety or hypochondria, then this video is just for you. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Truth be told, it is impossible for me to say exactly where hypochondria comes from, because the way that one person will create the symptoms of hypochondria, another person may be creating the symptoms from a different place, if that, hopefully that makes sense. So what I'll do in this video is share some of the top reasons, fears or causes, and hopefully this can give you some clarity in your current situation with health anxiety or hypochondria. So trigger warning here, I'll be talking about some sensitive topics. However, I'm going to proceed anyway. So when it comes to health anxiety, the top causes or the top fears for health anxiety include the fear of death, the fear of getting seriously ill, the fear of pain, the fear of going to the doctors or going to the hospital. All of these kind of fears are the main fears for the causes for hypochondria. So when you have these fears, what the mind will begin to do is it will begin to think thoughts that are in alignment with these fears. There's a CBT term for this, and they're called the ants. So you need to be careful of the ants. Everyone hates ants. And ants stand for automatic negative thoughts. And you know what ants are like? They come in numbers, and once one ant creeps in, it's very easy for another one to start creeping in. What happens is once you begin to have these thoughts, the brain will actually take these thoughts and take these ideas and then turn it into the new reality and turn it into a real reality for you. So a classic thought for hypochondria could be that you start to begin to believe that you are either seriously ill or becoming seriously ill. And the brain takes these ideas and then starts to believe them and starts to create them. And then what this does from here on out is this creates fear, this creates worry, it creates panic throughout the system. The thoughts that you have are directly linked to what happens in the body. And the very act of having a fearful thought alone can actually create the symptoms that you are worried about, and it can actually create more symptoms and create phantom symptoms, as I like to call them. And then once you experience these symptoms, it then takes you back to the initial fear that you were worried about in the first place, of becoming seriously ill, for example, and then the cycle continues. So that is just one example of how or where hypochondria comes from, and sort of the loop that sort of happens. So another possible cause for hypochondria that is quite common is actually picking up these kinds of behaviors from a hypochondriac parent when you were younger. So basically, in this case, you unconsciously pick up these behaviors from your caregiver when you was younger, and then mirror these behaviors back into your world, into your life when you are older. I would just like to point out that it does not come from genetics. There is no hypochondria gene in existence, at least that I know of. So what actually happens is that it comes from unconscious fears. And when I talk about the unconscious is the iceberg of the mind. So if you think of the conscious mind as this sort of the thinking mind, the analytical mind, and then the subconscious mind the unconscious mind is the domain of all emotions. There are many other traits to it, but this is one of the more notable ones. So in other words, when you're younger and you pick up these behaviors from your caregiver, the unconscious mind will actually pick up on these fears, and it might completely bypass your thinking rational mind. But what happens is you take on these fears, you take on these emotions without even sort of consciously realizing what's happening. And then from this point on, the mind will create thoughts, it will create beliefs that are in alignment with these fears from this moment on. And this is what feeds the fuel to the flames of health anxiety. So let's add some more context to this. So let's just take the example of having a fear of becoming seriously ill again. So let's say you hear someone close to you become seriously ill. You may then begin to think, oh, what if I become seriously ill? Or what if I am ill? You could even go so far in that moment as creating false symptoms in alignment with those thoughts. And this could be where the panic sets in, and then you scan the body for evidence, and then you may even find some kind of evidence which in that moment make sense to you. And then again, you start to believe, oh, this is actually happening. I'm becoming ill, or I am ill. So let's just take a quick step back from all this, because this is sort of like the health anxiety loop, as I like to call it. But what's actually happening in this moment? Because when you start to have these hypochondria thoughts, these health anxiety thoughts, and you start to experience this loop, what the mind likes to do is it likes to find answers. It likes to know what's going on. So when you start to experience these emotions that you don't want to experience, this panic, this worry, this anxiety, the body or the mind wants to, as I say, search for an answer. And this is where it's very easy to link two things together falsely. This is called anchoring, when that you have like a very strong negative emotion and then a thought which seems to be right. You then anchor the thought to the feeling, and this is then making these the connections between these two things stronger. Whereas in actuality, what is actually happening when you're experiencing this fear and panic is it is the realization of these fears that you have. So let's take, for example, if you have a fear of becoming seriously ill, you're literally creating that reality for yourself in that moment when you are experiencing these emotions. In other words, the fear and panic arises disguised as health anxiety thoughts, and what is really going on inside the body is that it's a false alarm. So when it comes to anxiety, a really good way of thinking about setting off the anxiety response is the fire alarm analogy. So I'm sure you've probably had it in your life where you've been cooking and you set the fire alarm off because there's too much smoke in the air, and maybe even there's someone else in the house and they start to panic. They're like, oh, what's going on? Why is the fire alarm going off? And then you shout up and say, oh, it's okay, I'm just cooking. So it's a false alarm. And by the way, this alarm system that we have isn't a bad thing at all. It's our flight and flight response. It's evolved with us over tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years maybe, to keep us alive as a species. So it's not inherently a bad thing. It's just when it comes to anxiety, is that, as I mentioned earlier, these certain thoughts and feelings, they sort of get pinned together, and it sets off the system as a false alarm. And if you're in our day-to-day lives and we're just sort of mulling around the house or at work or in the supermarket and this alarm goes off, that's like the time that we do not want it to go off, because there's no threat, and we know there's no threat, but it's still going off, and we're having to deal with these symptoms and deal with these thoughts. And the way to overcome these fears and thoughts and emotions is to really dive into the deepest parts of them, and to change the way that you relate to them and change the relationship that you have with these thoughts and feelings. So there you have it. So these have been some of the most common causes for health anxiety. There are plenty more, however, I'm sure that's for another video in the future. I would just like to take this opportunity to mention that I do actually work with people who have health anxiety to overcome their health anxiety. So if you've been watching this video and you feel that you relate to this in some way, or that it sounds like you that I'm talking to and things make a bit more sense after watching this, then there is plenty more that we can do together. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, then there is a link in my bio on my Facebook or Instagram page, and from there click that link and that will take you to a booking system, and from there you can book a free 30-minute consultation call. And the aim of this call is to just give you some more clarity in your current situation, and to also discuss how we can go about eliminating this health anxiety together as a team once and for all. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, as I said, there's a link in the bio, either in the Facebook or Instagram. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this video and that it's provided you with some clarity. And if you're still with me at this point, then thank you for watching. I do truly appreciate it, and take care.